Shrouded Fable is unlike any other recent Pokemon set, and I believe that it will fundamentally change how decks are built and the way in which the Pokemon trading card game is played. And this card might just be the secret to unlocking it all and winning me the World Championships. You're probably wondering how I got to the point where I thought that this Pelican, that doesn't even have a Limitless page yet, was going to make me $50,000. And don't worry, we'll get back to them. But first, let me tell you about these past couple of weeks, because I've been on somewhat of a journey, a quest to find the perfect combination of 60 cards that I can use to win the 2024 Pokemon World Championships. Now, I could try and win with one of the standard meta decks, like Regidrago, Charizard, Gardevoir, Lugia, Raging Bolt, or even Blocklax. I mean, at the 4 major events I attended this season, I played a completely different deck to each of them, so picking up a brand new deck really isn't out of my comfort zone. But I'm just not the biggest fan of any of these, and to be completely honest with you, I really just want to cook. I often think to myself, I'm going to win a tournament. I want to do something interesting, not just another cut and paste meta deck that looks like everything else in top 8. So, the question is, what ingredients do we actually have to cook with? First up, we've got Nightly Stretcher, a new card that lets you pick either a Pokemon or a basic energy from your discard and add it to your hand. Initially, this may seem like a very bland card. What it does is further enable strategies that play to use the discard as a resource. This is a concept which is much more prevalent in other card games, such as Magic the Gathering and Yu-Gi-Oh!, but did used to exist more in Pokemon before my time, with cards such as Battle Compressor and VS Seeker. If you're playing a deck with 4 Nightly Stretcher, you can utilize cards such as Squawkabilly, Professor's Research, and Pokestop. Suddenly, these discard costs become much less consequential, and it can actually be beneficial to discard your Pokemon energies, as they'll be easier to search out later. Compared to needing something like an Ultra Ball, which requires 2 cards in hand, Nightly Stretcher will just grab it straight from the discard. This also allows you to run thinner lines of your Pokemon, as they'll become more reusable with the additional stretches. This kind of engine is absolutely an idea that I want to explore further in my deck building. Next, we have the Dusclops line. Both Dusclops and Dusknoir can carry themselves in order to deal 50 and 130 damage respectively to anything on your opponent's board. While this damage can be great, I think it's the idea of giving your opponent a prize card that is the real source going on here. There are so many comeback mechanics in the game right now, like Counter Catcher, Reversal Energy, and Iono, just to name a few. Forcing your opponent ahead in the prize race in order to enable these tools is often worth giving up the prize, and it can completely shift the momentum of a game. I believe that we might have hit a critical mass in terms of comeback cards, to the point where these self-KOing fellas have the potential to enable a really powerful strategy. The last ingredient that I wanted to look into was the Pecharunt Donk concept, which I'd been spending a lot of time working with. Unfortunately, this card is going to be banned for the World Championships, so even though I had some pretty spicy ideas brewing, I'm going to have to put those on hold for now, because I guess Pokemon knew it was just too powerful for the World Championships. So what decks have I actually been cooking up with all these tasty ingredients? I looked at all of those broken comeback mechanics that you get access to when you're down on prizes and thought, there's got to be a way to abuse these. So I drafted this up. Luxray has a really strong attack for a 1-prize Pokemon, and as a lightning type, it can hit some pretty relevant weaknesses. Despite being an evolution Pokemon, its ability Swelling Flash allows it to come straight into play when I'm behind in prizes. Counter Catcher consistently lets me target my opponent's most valuable Pokemon each turn, and Reversal Energy can instantly power up Luxray with a single attachment. But what am I going to do if my opponent just doesn't take prizes? This is where the new Dusclops card fits in perfectly. Not only does it help to fix a whole bunch of maths, for example allowing me to hit 230 damage to easily knock out those basic V and EX Pokemon, it most importantly forces my opponent to take a prize card. But you can't be behind in prizes forever, you've got to win the game at some point. So the deck should also include some kind of finisher, like a Radiant Charizard, Crisis Punch, or this nifty Slowbro that lets you take 2 prizes for free. That all sounds great, so why am I not playing this deck to Worlds? It turns out that a lot of other decks are also capable of manipulating the prize trade and taking multi-prize turns, with common options being Dragapult EX, Munkidori, or even their own Dusclops. This can frequently force you into a position where if you want to have an attacker available, you may need to keep feeding your opponent prize cards while they continue to set up for their own big turn. The deck also has a tendency to fall to late game disruption if your opponent is able to consistently target your draw engine. While I couldn't quite crack the deck in time for Worlds, I really do think there might be something here, and if you have your own thoughts on the idea, I would love to hear them down in the comments. How about that other idea that I mentioned, where you try to play more from the discard? Well, there are already a couple existing decks that somewhat play into this strategy. Both Goldango and Raging Bolt frequently run Pokestop and energy retrievals, so maybe there is a way that we can exaggerate this strength. I want to turn Pokestop's effect into a win-win, where I either get to draw some items, or I put resources in the bin so that I can easily access them later, with Nightly Stretcher or other options like Professor Sada or Energy Retrieval. The main changes to both of these decks involve turning up the counts of Pokestop and adding in 4 Nightly Stretcher, with the idea being that this will not only speed up the decks, but also add consistency and improve resilience to late game disruption. Unfortunately, while this idea was a good fit for both of these decks, and might even be the best way to play them moving forward, it did feel a bit like I was just attaching some bells and whistles to something that was already established, rather than starting with this engine and building a deck from the ground up with that in mind. While it was absolutely an interesting way to play the decks, it also just fundamentally didn't change anything about their relatively linear game plan. So regardless of consistency, they still weren't a super appealing deck choice for me to bring to the World Championships. It's a shame those last couple decks didn't really work out, but they each had some interesting concepts that I'd like to keep working with. What if we built a deck that had heavy discard synergy with 4 Nightly Stretches and could abuse broken comeback mechanics? Here's what you've all been waiting for. The secret sauce that is absolutely going to farm worlds. The deck I cooked up which completely breaks this Pelipper. What the deck does is play Roxanne on turn 2 every game, no matter what your opponent does. So how does this work? Well, Squawkabilly and Carmine are going to let me rip through my deck, pair this with a whole bunch of Buddy Buddy Poffins, Nest Balls, and Ultra Balls, and I'm basically guaranteeing that I'm going to end turn 1 with 3 Dusclops and a Wind Gull on my bench. And my opponent, they can do whatever they want, because they won't be ready for what I'm about to pull off. I'm going to drop 50 damage cursed bombs all over their board, and then use Pelipper to find Roxanne, regardless of if it's in my deck, or if I've already discarded it. And I'm going to follow that up with a huge Radiant Charizard attack, which I can keep recycling thanks to Magma Basin and Nightly Stretcher. This is crazy. So why don't we take a look at this great deck in action? Here's a game that I played on live, where I've sped up the footage because it's just really slow and not that fun to watch. We won the coin flip, so we're going to be going first. And if you take a look at this hand, it seems really strong. It seems like we're going to be having access to all of the guys that we need on the bench, especially with that Buddy Buddy Poff and top deck. And we have the Hyper Aroma to get all of the stage 1s that we need for the combo. So we've pretty much already got it. Actually, if you look at this hand, if we just evolve the Dusclops and then play Hyper Aroma, we'll have access to all 4 stage 1s that we need for the full combo. I've put down a Rotom with a Forest Sealstone, just in case we get hand disrupted, and there's the Iono, so lucky I did that. But as you can see, I'm still able to Forest Sealstone for that Hyper Aroma, as well as put down that Dusclops that's in hand, and I'll have the full combo right there. So we've already got it. Look how easy it was to get that turn 2 Roxanne. This is incredible. So once they finish doing all of their actions, which I don't know what they're doing, I don't know why they care, they're about to get Roxanne, they're going to lose this game, it's whatever. But they're going to do all their actions, they're done now, and I'm going to try and pull off the combo without having to use the Forest Sealstone, so we're going to have access to it later. But it doesn't really work out, and I'm going to have to use it anyway just to grab that Hyper Aroma, grab the last 2 stage 1s that I need, and there we go. That easy, turn 2 Roxanne. You can just pull that off pretty much every game, and it's just crazy. Your opponent gets 2 cards. Like, they've already set up pretty strong, but they're about to just lose because Roxanne's just so broken. Comeback mechanics are silly. There we go, knock out the Greninja. Now I'm going to play down the Pelipper. I'm going to grab a Roxanne from my deck because I hadn't discarded one yet, I believe. Just making some other actions. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Game's basically over. Like, I don't know what else could happen here. Wait, I lost? Yeah, it turns out this deck kinda sucks. It's pretty consistent at getting the Roxanne off, but that isn't always enough to actually win games, especially since a lot of decks are including strong measures against disruption, like the new Fezandipity. It makes it really hard to keep them at a low hand size after that initial Roxanne. The World Championships are less than a week away, and I still don't have a deck cooked up. I really don't want to resort to just playing Regidrago mirrors all day. If only there was... Hello? What's that? A top secret deck idea that's way too spicy to leak on YouTube before Worlds? I think my prayers might have just been answered. But if you want to hear about this actually good deck, then you better subscribe so that you can catch my next video where I talk about this 50k that I'm about to win at Worlds.